The rain had been falling all evening, a steady, gentle rhythm against the windows, filling the quiet house with a soft, calming sound. Ethan sat on his bed, reading a book, but the silence around him felt heavier than usual, almost like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Then came the soft knock on his door, hesitant, almost timid. It was his mother, Margaret, standing there with tired eyes that Ethan didn't recognize. She was usually so strong, so full of life, always managing the house, work, and everything else without complaint. Tonight, though, there was a fragility in her expression that made his heart tighten. "I can't sleep," she said, her voice quiet, steady, but carrying an edge of vulnerability he rarely heard. Ethan didn't hesitate, he stepped aside, letting her in, the warmth from the house contrasting with the cold drizzle outside. Margaret sat on the chair near his desk, holding a mug of tea she hadn't touched, her hands wrapped around it as if trying to find comfort. Silence settled between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable, it was heavy, charged with unspoken words and emotions. She finally spoke, her voice softer now, almost like a whisper. "Do you ever feel like life moves on, but part of you stays behind?" Ethan felt the question sink into him, and though he didn't have the perfect answer, he knew she didn't need one. She needed someone to listen, someone to just be there with her. And so he did, moving closer, sitting beside her without speaking, letting the quiet of the rain and the room fill the space. Margaret began to share memories, not all of them happy, some tinged with regret, some with longing. She spoke about dreams she once had, the love she had given and lost, and the moments in her life when she felt alone even surrounded by people. Ethan listened, feeling the weight of her words, the honesty in her tone, the way she let herself be vulnerable in front of him, her own son, the one she had always protected from the harshness of the world. There was no judgment, no awkwardness, just a connection that had always been there but now felt deeper, more urgent. He reached out, gently taking her hand, a simple gesture that carried warmth, comfort, and understanding. Margaret squeezed back, a silent acknowledgement that she was not alone anymore. That night, they didn't need to fill the air with meaningless chatter or forced reassurances, the presence of each other was enough. Ethan realized something important too, that supporting someone didn't always mean having answers, it meant simply being there when they needed you most. The rain continued outside, steady and rhythmic, a soft soundtrack to a night of honesty and closeness that neither of them would forget, a night that quietly shifted the balance of their relationship, creating a new space of trust, love, and mutual care. For Margaret, it was a release, a chance to let down the armor she had worn for so long, to show the parts of herself she usually kept hidden. For Ethan, it was an awakening, an understanding that being there for someone could be powerful in its simplicity, a gentle reminder that even those who seem strongest need a hand to hold sometimes. They stayed that way for hours, talking softly, listening more than speaking, letting the night carry away the heaviness that had settled on Margaret's heart. And though the night was long and the rain relentless, there was a sense of peace, a quiet, unspoken promise that they would always be there for each other, through storms, silence, and everything in between, a bond strengthened by empathy, love, and the courage to be vulnerable in a world that often demanded strength at all costs. Margaret sat in the chair, her hands still wrapped around the warm mug, and for the first time in years, she began to speak without holding back, her words flowing. Like the rain outside, soft but relentless, touching places Ethan had never seen before. She spoke about loneliness, the kind that doesn't disappear when people are around, the kind that settles quietly in your chest and refuses to leave, the kind that grows when you carry the weight of life's responsibilities alone. She shared memories of youth, of love and hope, and how time had shifted those dreams into something quieter, smaller, but still aching to be acknowledged. Ethan listened, his heart tightening as he realized how much she had carried silently, how much she had endured without showing it, how she had always been the protector, the caretaker, the unshakable pillar, yet inside, she had desires, regrets, and fears just like anyone else. Margaret's voice wavered occasionally, betraying the emotions she tried to keep hidden, and Ethan felt a wave of empathy wash over him, a mixture of admiration, sorrow, and something tender he didn't expect. She admitted that being strong had cost her, that she had sacrificed pieces of herself for others, and sometimes she wondered if she had given too much. Ethan reached out without thinking, holding her hand firmly, a gesture that conveyed more than words ever could to support, love, reassurance, a reminder that she didn't have to face everything alone. Margaret's eyes glistened as she held his hand back, a quiet acknowledgement that she was seen, understood, and not alone anymore. For the first time in a long while, she felt the release of simply being heard, without judgment, without expectation, just a presence that mattered. Ethan, in turn, felt a shift within himself, realizing that his role in her life wasn't only to be cared for as a son but also to be a source of comfort, a safe space where vulnerability could exist without shame. They shared stories, some funny, some sad, some bittersweet, weaving a tapestry of memories and emotions that bound them closer together. Margaret laughed softly at recollections she hadn't thought about in years, her eyes lighting up even as traces of sadness lingered. Ethan encouraged her gently, affirming that her feelings were valid, that she had done enough, and that being human meant needing support sometimes, even for someone as strong as she had always seemed. As the night stretched on, they remained close, the quiet intimacy of shared truths creating an invisible connection stronger than any spoken promise. Outside, the rain continued, steady and calming, mirroring the rhythm of their hearts, and in that simple, unforced companionship, Margaret found a sense of peace, a gentle comfort that she had long denied herself. Ethan understood that the night wasn't about solving problems or giving advice, it was about presence, about being fully attentive, about love in its purest form, uncomplicated, patient, and unwavering. Margaret's vulnerability didn't feel like weakness, it felt like trust, a gift she had never given so freely before. Ethan felt honored, humbled by the trust his mother placed in him, and he silently promised to honor it without question. As the hours passed, they continued talking softly, the conversation flowing like a river, touching upon dreams, regrets, fears, and small joys, creating a shared space where emotions could breathe without fear. Margaret leaned back slightly, the tension in her shoulders easing, the warmth of the room and her son's presence wrapping around her like a protective blanket. Ethan realized that moments like this were rare, precious, and transformative, and he felt a quiet pride in being able to offer what she needed most: support, understanding, and the reassurance that she was never truly alone. By the time the night had deepened into the early hours, the weight that had burdened Margaret's heart had lifted slightly, replaced by a fragile but undeniable hope. Both of them knew that life would continue to challenge and demand, but in that night of shared vulnerability, they had discovered a deeper layer of their bond, one built on empathy, trust, and the courage to open their hearts fully. The connection they had nurtured was not fleeting. It was a seed of emotional intimacy that would grow quietly, steadily, strengthening their relationship in ways neither had anticipated, proving that sometimes the greatest acts of love are the simplest ones: listening, holding, and being there without expectation. The rain continued its gentle patter outside, a soft lullaby for a night filled with honesty and the quiet power of human connection, a night that would remain etched in their memories as the beginning of a new, tender chapter in their lives, a chapter where vulnerability was met with care, and love was expressed through understanding and unwavering support. Days passed after that quiet, rainy night, and Ethan noticed a subtle change in their home. Margaret seemed lighter, though there were still moments when her eyes clouded with thought. Their conversations grew longer, more personal, and unexpectedly tender. They shared memories of childhood, stories of mistakes and triumphs, fears about the future, and dreams they hadn't dared speak aloud in years. Margaret laughed more freely, yet sometimes fell silent, lost in reflection, and Ethan felt a new responsibility: to be present without pushing, to offer comfort without questioning. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, casting a warm glow through the kitchen windows, Margaret paused and turned to him, her expression gentle but earnest. "I don't want to put too much on you," she said, almost apologetically. Ethan shook his head, smiling softly. "You're not putting anything on me. You're my mom, and I want to be here." Her eyes softened, a mixture of relief and gratitude evident in her gaze, as if a weight she hadn't acknowledged was finally being lifted. In those moments, Ethan realized that being close to her didn't just mean listening, it meant sharing the emotional load she had carried alone for so long, offering reassurance with nothing more than his presence, his willingness to understand. Nights became calmer, filled with quiet talks and shared silences that were comforting rather than awkward. Margaret would sometimes linger in the living room, sipping tea or looking out the window, and Ethan would join her, no words necessary, just a sense of companionship that felt deep and real. The bond between them shifted from the traditional parent-child dynamic to something more profound, an emotional partnership built on mutual care and respect. Ethan discovered that supporting someone didn't require fixing their problems, it meant showing up, listening, and offering understanding when words alone couldn't suffice. Margaret, in turn, began to embrace the vulnerability she had avoided for years, recognizing that asking for support wasn't weakness but a form of strength. She started considering changes in her life, small steps toward opening her heart to joy again, allowing herself moments of peace she had long denied. Their evenings together, once ordinary, became a sanctuary where they could both breathe, where the complexities of life felt lighter, and where the love they shared took a new, more balanced shape. They laughed at memories, discussed dreams, and occasionally shared silences filled with unspoken reassurance, each moment building trust and deepening the emotional intimacy between them. Margaret found comfort in Ethan's presence, in his steady understanding, and in the knowledge that she didn't have to carry everything alone. Ethan, meanwhile, felt a sense of pride and fulfillment, understanding that being there for someone you love could be transformative, a quiet force that healed wounds invisible to the eye. Nights passed, but the connection they nurtured continued to grow, a subtle, enduring strength that reshaped their relationship. Margaret realized that letting someone in didn't diminish her independence, it enriched her life, offering emotional companionship that had been missing for too long. Ethan learned that supporting someone you love isn't about grand gestures but about the quiet, consistent presence that conveys care and trust. In those days, they discovered a delicate balance between love, understanding, and respect, a shared emotional space where both could feel safe and valued. The rain returned occasionally, but it no longer felt heavy or melancholy. Instead, it became a backdrop for reflection, conversation, and connection. Margaret and Ethan moved through their days with a sense of renewed closeness, their bond strengthened by shared vulnerabilities and mutual support, understanding that emotional intimacy can exist without pressure, without judgment, and without crossing boundaries, but with honesty, care, and a willingness to be present for each other. Each evening together became a gentle reminder that life's challenges could be softened by love, trust, and the courage to embrace the full spectrum of human emotion, that the simple act of being there for someone could create profound and lasting change. The house, once quiet and heavy, now felt warmer, filled with the energy of emotional healing and the quiet joy of connection. Margaret's laughter returned more often, her steps lighter, and Ethan found comfort in witnessing her renewed spirit. Together, they learned that being close to someone didn't have to complicate life, it could deepen it, enrich it, and bring clarity and peace. Through shared stories, gentle conversations, and comforting silences, they both discovered the quiet power of mutual support, a bond rooted in love, respect, and the courage to be vulnerable, a bond that would continue to grow with every day they spent side by side. Weeks had passed since that quiet night of shared words and lingering silences, and the house felt different, warmer, lighter, filled with a sense of calm that neither Ethan nor Margaret had expected. The rain returned one evening, gentle and steady, drumming softly against the windows, and Margaret sat on the porch wrapped in a cozy sweater, staring at the darkened sky as though searching for something beyond the clouds. Ethan joined her without speaking, carrying a mug of tea, and sat quietly beside her, the comfort of companionship more meaningful than words. Margaret exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of weeks of reflection and change pressing on her chest, and she finally spoke, her voice low but steady. "I've been thinking," she said, "about starting again, not rushing, just opening my heart to life, little by little." Ethan smiled, offering the warmth of his presence as a reassurance she could hold on to. She turned to him, really looked at him, and in that moment, the gratitude and love in her eyes were unmistakable. Margaret felt proud, not in the way one brags, but in the way someone feels whole, recognized, and understood, as though the quiet support she had received had allowed her to rediscover a part of herself she had forgotten. Ethan understood too, that supporting someone doesn't always mean grand gestures or dramatic actions. Sometimes it's the simple, steadfast presence, the quiet listening, the ability to sit together in silence and let someone feel truly seen. That night wasn't about solving her problems or offering advice, it was about holding space for her heart, for her thoughts, for her emotions, and showing that she could rely on another without fear or shame. Margaret reflected on how much strength she had always relied upon, how much she had carried alone, and how transformative it felt to share that load, to let someone into her life not as a helper but as a companion. Ethan felt a deep sense of pride and calm, realizing that being there for someone you love could have an impact more profound than words could ever capture, that sometimes love's greatest expression is in the quiet support and understanding we offer freely. The rain continued, soft and rhythmic, as they sat together, not needing to fill the space with chatter, but feeling the weight of connection, empathy, and unspoken affection. Margaret leaned back slightly, feeling the cool air brush her face, thinking about the future, and for the first time in a long while, allowing herself to hope without fear, to feel joy without guilt, to embrace the possibility of new beginnings. She realized that opening her heart again didn't mean she was weak or dependent, it meant she was human, capable of receiving love and care as fully as she gave it. Ethan, observing her, felt a renewed understanding of what family, love, and connection truly meant, the mutual exchange of care, the willingness to be vulnerable, and the courage to accept support when it is offered. They shared stories of past regrets and triumphs, laughed softly at memories, and simply existed together in a quiet, steady rhythm that nurtured both of their hearts. Margaret recognized that her relationship with Ethan had transformed, grown deeper, more balanced, no longer just mother and son, but two humans connecting through shared empathy, love, and understanding. She felt comforted, alive, and ready to embrace life with a heart more open than it had been in years, appreciating the small, meaningful moments that often go unnoticed but leave lasting impacts. Ethan felt a sense of fulfillment, understanding that by simply being there, by offering emotional presence, he had contributed to a healing process that words alone could not achieve. Nights like this became more frequent, shared times of reflection, quiet laughter, and gentle companionship that strengthened their bond and reminded them that support and love are not burdens but gifts, freely given and gratefully received. The house, once heavy with silence and unspoken struggles, now carried an aura of peace and warmth, a safe space where emotions could be expressed freely, where hearts could be open without fear of judgment, and where the simple act of sitting together could mean more than any grand gesture ever could. Margaret's renewed spirit became evident in her steps, her laughter, her willingness to embrace life's small joys, and Ethan found a quiet happiness in witnessing her transformation. They discovered together that emotional intimacy and mutual support could exist without overstepping boundaries, that love could be gentle, patient, and sustaining, and that being fully present for someone is a profound act of care. The rain continued its gentle rhythm, a soft, calming soundtrack to a night of emotional renewal, reflection, and deep connection, marking a turning point where vulnerability met strength, support met gratitude, and hearts met each other with honesty and tenderness. In those quiet hours, Margaret and Ethan realized that life could be approached with hope, courage, and open hearts, that the simplest gestures often carry the greatest weight, and that the bond between them had become a source of enduring comfort and joy, one that would continue to grow with each shared moment, each silent understanding, and each gentle act of love.